Okay, so my name is Gracie Morrison, and tonight we're going to be solving a stoichiometry problem. So our problem says potassium hydroxide is added to hydrochloric acid to produce potassium chloride in water. How many grams of potassium chloride can be produced from 547 grams of potassium hydroxide? So we must start off with our skeleton equation. So we know we have potassium hydroxide, which is KOH. And then we have hydrochloric acid, which is HCl. To produce potassium chloride, KCl, and water, which is H2O. So that's our skeleton equation. But we have to make sure our equation is balanced before we can go in to figuring out how many grams of potassium hydroxide we have. So what we're going to do is consider this H2O as HOH, because on this side of the equation with your reactants you have an OH and an H to produce your H2O. So we have a potassium, OH, hydrogen, and chloride. So on this side of the equation we see we have one potassium, one OH, one hydrogen, and one chloride. On this side of the equation, we have one potassium, one chloride, one hydrogen, and one OH. So, because they each have one on each side, this equation is balanced as is. So, now what we have to do is figure out our molar masses, because before we can figure out our grams of potassium hydroxide, we need to know how much each thing weighs. So potassium, so we'll start off with potassium hydroxide. So potassium hydroxide, potassium is 39.10 grams, oxygen is 16.0 grams, and hydrogen is 1.008 grams. So if we add that together, you should get 56.108 grams. So that is what we call your molar mass, which is the total combined mass of every atom in your molecule. So now we're going to go and do calcium chloride. So potassium, again, is 39.01, and chlorine is 35.45 grams. So if you add that up, you should get 74.55 grams. Okay, so we have to start with our given of our problem. So our given is 547 grams of potassium hydroxide. So in our stoichiometry problem, we're going to start off with 547 grams of KOH. So that's our given. Now, what we need to do is to convert this KOH, or potassium hydroxide, into moles. So, in order to cancel out the grams, we need to take our molar mass, which is 56.108 grams, and put that on the bottom so it cancels out. So we can convert this into moles. So for every 1 mole of KOH, we have our molar mass, which is 56.108 grams. Alright, so now that we have that, what we want to do is convert potassium hydroxide, KOH, to potassium chloride, KCl. So in order to do that, we need to make our molar ratio. And the molar ratio is the ratio of moles between molecules. So if we look at it, we have one of every molecule. So in order to convert potassium hydroxide, KOH, to potassium chloride, KCl, we know we have one potassium hydroxide and one potassium chloride. So since we have 1 mole of potassium hydroxide on top, that must go on the bottom for it to cancel out so we can convert it into potassium chloride. So you put 1 mole of potassium hydroxide on the bottom and 1 mole of calcium chloride on the top. So now this is canceled out. So now we are left with calcium chloride. And since we want to know how many grams of potassium chloride we can have, this now needs to be converted into grams. So, in order to do that, for it to cancel out, we must put moles on the bottom, and we have our molar mass. So for every 1 mole of calcium chloride, we have 74.55 grams. So 1 mole calcium chloride will go on the bottom, and 74.55 grams of calcium chloride goes on the top. So now we have started with our, since we have started with our given 547 grams of potassium hydroxide, and now we're where we want to end with grams of calcium chloride. So this is where we started, this is where we want to end. So everything cancels out. A gram potassium hydroxide, a gram of potassium hydroxide, KOH, a mole of potassium hydroxide, a mole of potassium hydroxide, a mole of calcium chloride, a mole of calcium chloride, and then we're ending with grams of calcium chloride. So when you're typing this into your calculator, the top is all multiplied and the bottom is division. So what we're going to type into your calculator is 547 times 1 times 1, and you know, you can just leave that out if you want to, times 74.55. So that is what you have on your top. On your bottom, you have 56.101 and 1. So 56.1, oh that's 108, times 1 times 1. So the easiest way to type this into your calculator is just 547 times 74.55, since this is a 1 and this is a 1, divided by 56.108. So when you type that into your calculator, you should get 726.792. Now we have to remember our significant figures. And since this is multiplication, your significant figures is going to be the least amount of digits you have. So since these ones, this is a counting number, so you can ignore that. Now you have 3 sig figs, 5 sig figs, and 4 sig figs. Out of that, 3 is the smallest number. So this needs to be rounded to 3 numbers. So this 726, since this is a 7, it's higher than 5, so that rounds up. So this rounds up to 700, go away Chloe, 127 grams of calcium chloride. And that is your final answer. Thank you.